Welcome, atheists, agnostics, skeptics, whatever you'd like to call yourselves, you are welcome here. We call ourselves an atheist church because you will never hear anything supernatural promoted from the podium. Seattle Atheist Church was founded on the principles of scientific naturalism and secular ethics. Truth claims are attempted here, and we stand ready to revise our thinking in light of new information. We attempt to be excellent to all conscious beings, and we believe in good because good works in non-mysterious ways. If that sounds good to you, well, then you are in the right place. Before we get started, a couple points of business. In addition to church on Sundays, we invite you to Herstory, Wednesday, March 28th. I think Jack put that up. That will be from 6 to 9 p.m. at Browers. It should say that on the website as well. Please sign up for the First Friday movie night. Ooh, movie night. I like those. Which will be April 6th. If you appreciate the opportunity to gather like this, please invite people. That's one way you can contribute. You can also make a contribution here or in the meetup. The proceeds of all contributions go for operational costs like renting the room and getting these delicious snacks that you're eating today. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Ruth, who will be speaking today.
All right. Thank you for being here. Today I'm going to be talking about the juvenile justice system. And my talk is mostly based on the paper No Place for Kids by the Annie Casey Foundation. We have about 80,000 youth incarcerated right now, and 3/4 of them are incarcerated for non-violent crimes. On any given day, 10,000 youth are detained or incarcerated in adult jails and prisons. But today, I'm only going to focus on youth in youth facilities. Let's imagine a 13-year-old boy in an average-sized cell that's 6 by 8 feet. It's empty except for a molded plastic bed with no mattress during the day. The water in his toilet has been turned off, intentionally turned off by the guards, and he sits there alone for 23 hours a day. Depending on the state he's in, his average length of stay may be 6 months, it may be 18 months. Maybe you see him through a slot in the door, or maybe you see him through bars. So I'm talking today about that boy. The boy in a cage. Today I'm going to give you a talk that is filled with research-backed statistics because I want you to be able to understand the scope of what I'm talking about. So there are going to be 2 parts to my talk, and in the first part, which is most of the talk, I will set up the problem with the system. And then I will talk about promising reforms, some of which have only been around for about 10 years and so have not permeated the system. But they are reforms that offer us hope. I want to acknowledge that as bad as the system is generally, at every stage, African American and Latino youth receive harsher treatment than white Americans. Even when they are booked on the same charges and have the same criminal histories. They are booked at 5 times the rate. African Americans are booked at 5 times the rate of whites, even when they have been charged with the same crime and have the same criminal histories. The poor also often do not receive adequate counsel, which results in false confessions, unconstitutional pleas, pretrial detention, sometimes in solitary confinement, and wrongful conviction. Since 40% of the youth confined in are African American, this disproportionately affects the Black community. Correctional facilities, residential facilities, even the euphemistically named training schools, all amount to about the same thing. Facilities holding about 300 youths, which are run like prisons. And it's hard to change these policies because no politician wants to be seen as soft on crime. Local governments do not have the budgets to pay for alternative services. So referring kids to federally funded, state-run facilities makes economic sense. One judge said, with so few options available between probation and incarceration, it's like having to choose between an aspirin and a lobotomy for a migraine. Cost-effective community-based programs come at high cost to the local economy. And correctional facilities do the opposite. They actually provide jobs for the local economy. Altogether, the prison system costs taxpayers $74 billion a year. And for-profit companies like Corrections Corporation of America, there was a statistic which combined two companies. One was Corrections Corporation of America and some other company. Together, they earned over $2.5 billion in 2012. Now, I think that would be, not acceptable even if everything were on the up and up, but it's not always on the up and up. In 2008, judges Chavarella and Conahan were convicted of accepting $2.2 million in bribes for giving young offenders maximum sentences in return for kickbacks. Chavarella sentenced 3,000 children on offenses ranging from mocking a principal on MySpace, trespassing in a vacant building, cursing at another kid's mom, and shoplifting DVDs at a Walmart. Who gets arrested? Only 12% of all offenders are locked up on crimes that are on the violent offense index. So sexual assault, homicide, aggravated assault, or armed robbery. For example, in Florida in 2008, 56% were convicted on misdemeanors like probation violations and contempt of court and small property damage. What happens to the youth once they are inside? According to successful lawsuits brought by public interest advocates, violence from staff, including excessive use of restraints, including hog tying and strapping them into chair restraints. There is an epidemic of sexual assault. A Bureau of Justice Statistics study of 27,000 youth found that 13% had coerced genital contact and solitary confinement. For example, in Ohio, an average of 50 hours per resident in the month of July. In 2003 in California, 12% of youth were confined to their rooms for 23 hours a day. Now, even as there are reforms that happen very piecemeal on a state-by-state basis, and the Indiana Division of Youth Services is leading reform efforts to reduce the use of solitary confinement, their standards dictate that youth should not be confined alone unless their behavior threatens immediate physical harm to themselves or to others. And so the average duration of hours spent in isolation there decreased from 24 hours in April of 2009 to 3 hours in October 2015. That's a reduction of 87%. What doesn't happen in these places? So many lawsuits, which were successfully litigated, have focused on a failure to provide education, healthcare, mental health treatment, drug abuse counseling, and a lack of access to attorneys. I also want to mention that according to the Richard Ross book, 30% of these children do not receive a single visitor during the month that the data was collected. Okay? Also about these children, many of them are up to 4 years below grade level academically. A child who goes in at 13 and comes out at 15 is not likely to return to school. I hope you're ready for some good news. I sure am, because there are things that we can do. And it starts with detention reform, because we know that youth that are kept at home while they're waiting sentencing are less likely to be placed into correctional institutions in the first place. We need to rethink the zero-tolerance school discipline policies and empower schools with strong support for referrals to mental health, substance abuse treatment programs, and mentorship programs in the community. We need to provide youth with adequate legal representation. We need to limit eligibility for correctional commitment to only violent crimes. And in particular, eliminate placements based on contempt of court. We need to limit the length of stay because research has shown that longer stays are not beneficial. They have a neutral effect in some studies, and they have a negative effect on others. And we can, as President Obama did for federal prisons, we can ban the use of solitary confinement for minors. And ultimately, we can replace large institutions with small treatment-oriented facilities. In recent years, we have discovered that there are 3 evidence-based programs which show really good results. Showing good results means reduces the amount of recidivism. They are cognitive behavior therapy, MST, and FFT. Cognitive therapies were a particularly effective method. Evidence shows that programs which offered counseling and skill building reduced recidivism. Developing the ability to see things from other perspectives and to use problem-solving skills led to a 26% reduction in recidivism, and it cost only $1,000 per treatment. Many randomized trials show superior results for something called multisystemic therapy, MST. Where MST was used, arrest rates were 70% lower than when somebody went in and received usual services. Another promising program is called functional family therapy. The participants in functional family therapy were 6 times more likely to avoid rearrest, and that's 40% compared to 7% for offenders receiving the usual services. In multi-dimensional treatment foster care, functional family therapy is a little like the multi-dimensional treatment foster care, because what it is it provides family therapy for like the whole family. They go and they visit and they do therapy, often actually right in the young person's home with the whole family. In multi-dimensional treatment foster care, delinquents are placed with specially trained foster families while their parents or guardians receive intensive counseling and parent training for 9 months. Then, when the family is reunited, they are provided ongoing support until their situation is stabilized. In Florida, these programs, as of August 2008, had saved the state of Florida over $41 million through reducing time in facilities and reducing recidivism. The program saved $96,000 per person, or have a return of $14 for every dollar spent. Other things that have proved useful but don't have the same level of evidence are providing vocational training, other mental health services, drug treatment plans, and mentorship programs. The average cost of incarceration is $88,000 a year. So, and there are some states where the average stay is 6 months, and there's some where the average stay is 18 months. Those sentences, by the way, are generally handed out for the same crimes, to the same level of criminality. So if you compare the $88,000 a year to $1,000 for cognitive behavioral therapy, or $1,000 for a mentorship program, or $17,000 for a vocational training program, there is a lot of opportunity to also save money by providing an alternative program as opposed to incarceration. And assuming that the evidence supports vocational training and mentorship, why not give people all three? Still 19,000 compared to 88,000. Despite evidence supporting cognitive behavioral therapy, MST, MFT, and MFTC, only 5% of offenders are offered these evidence-based treatments. So imagine what we could do if we started using evidence-based practices. But in order to do it, we have to first be able to see what is invisible to most of us. That in this society, we put our children in cages. Let's discuss.